This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was getting frustrated by your forms. Now, Taxes is uploading your forms with a snap, and a TurboTax expert will do your taxes for you. One who's backed by the latest tech, which cross-checks millions of data points for absolute accuracy, all of which makes it easy for you to get the most money back, guaranteed. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
So good, so good, so good.
New markdowns up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Fresh kicks, spring tops, new dresses. There's always a score.
I mean, the denim section is unreal.
Why do I rack? All the dresses.
I always find something amazing.
Head to your Nordstrom Rack store to find can't-miss deals on all the spring things. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
This podcast contains adult themes and language, and some of the things that we discuss may be disturbing to some listeners. In this podcast, we discuss sexual assault, torture, race, and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care of yourself.
And welcome to Fruitloops. Buiti binafi and bienvenidos, bitches. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah.
Fruitloops is a podcast about true crimes committed by people of color and those who are othered and the victims, because there are, believe it or not, systems, institutions, and patterns in society that gatekeep this information. But we're going to give it to you straight, no chaser. The truth is, we're all capable of doing very shitty stuff.
Yep.
And all victims deserve to have their stories told. These crimes rarely get any public attention because, in the simplest of terms, the news is racist. Allegedly.
And we are Wendy and Beth. She's Wendy, a Black Latinx woman, and I'm Beth, and I just happen to be white.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's just a little piece of who we are.
Oh, yes.
But who we are not is journalists, investigators, or psychologists. We're just a couple of gals interested in true crime. Also, the opinions expressed in this podcast are just that, our opinions.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to everyone listening. This is a very special episode.
Yes, it is.
And we have been talking for a minute about doing it, and we finally got on the calendar. We're so excited. And we're going to introduce our guest, who we are thrilled to have here.
Yeah.
But first, I'm Wendy. That's Beth. And
Hello.
we host Fruitloops, Serial Killers of Color, allegedly. And before I introduce our illustrious guest, Beth, can we tell the people who we are talking about today?
Well, today we're talking about the music, the life, the murder, the legend, and the legacy of the one and only Marvin Gaye. Actually, there's 3 Marvin Gayes, but this one,
yeah, okay, yeah,
the one in the middle,
yeah, the second, yeah,
the second Marvin Gaye. Mm-hmm. But before we get into it, let's introduce our guest.
All right. You know him as the co-host of the greatest true crime podcast in the world. It's been featured on a gazillion greatest true crime podcast
You can
lists
count them, gazillion.
and articles, including Insider, BuzzFeed, Marie Claire, ever heard of it, and The Hollywood Reporter. He's a pioneer in the true crime genre, CrimeCon royalty.
For sure.
For sure. And the host of Generation Y. It's Aaron!
I feel like I'm being introduced for like a big fight or something. Is Jake Paul about to come on? I'll have to drop out.
I don't know.
I'm heavyweight size, but no experience.
I know. You know what? I'm sorry. I'm very bad with the soundboard. Excuse me.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah, okay. Oh no. Okay.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
I'm just being realistic. I mean, I can fight, AI VR boxers and stuff, but not real ones.
That's okay. That's okay. You know what? You're a fighter in the podcasting world.
That's right.
You fight for the stories, you fight for the information, the truth, and you do it in a very entertaining way.
Yes, you do.
And we try to fight for perspective because so many times I'm reading an article or something and just the way the language is used or the way they're framing the story, I get frustrated because I'm thinking you're missing out on the real story here that can present people as human beings, right? Victims as people who were taken advantage of.
Absolutely.
And, where do we put justice in this whole story? So there is a lot to talk about in that regard.
Amen.
But I'm excited to talk about Marvin Gaye because honestly, when you mentioned it, it took me right back to when I was 15 years old, working in the Detroit area as an usher at a movie theater. And we were the only theater around that served alcohol.
Oh boy,
and,
that sounds dangerous.
So you could get your drink on and watch Die Hard, whatever. And it was an incredible job. And I worked with a guy and we were both really into metal at the time. But I'll tell you what, as soon as they started kicking on that Motown music, we would sing right along.
Oh, yeah.
And we would go up and down the aisles sweeping, singing loudly to Marvin Gaye and Sam Cooke and you name it. And people would get a kick out of us.
Oh,
that's
my gosh.
Awesome.
Wow. I love that. I don't think I realized that you were from Detroit. And that comes up a lot in Marvin Gaye's story. So Motor City, born and raised?
Yeah. I just went back there to visit a prisoner, actually. And I just absolutely love Detroit, Michigan. That is my spot. I don't live there anymore. But if you ask me my favorite place on the planet, it's Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, wow.
Get out. Wow. So Motown is like in your blood. No?
I guess so. I mean, I hear that.
Did you ever
I'm
meet
telling
Berry
you, like,
Gordy?
if you say, do you like R&B? I'm like, no. I listen to like new wave and electronic and, industrial music. But man, when I listen to Motown, it just comes on. Now I'm listening to it. I love it.
Yeah, I've been listening to it a lot leading up to today. And God, that stuff slaps.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Nothing but bangers. They had a good formula over there. It was just hit after hit after hit. And then Marvin Gaye comes along.
It's really, what it's really striking me is, I think about over time, what stands out to me is when Elvis appeared and he started moving and the audience lost their minds, right? And I think what that is I think musically, white people tend to be more uptight. They don't really let it go, especially back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where culturally, that's where it's good to have other cultures have an impact because it can kind of shake things up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really what I came away from researching this and thinking about. And I'll talk about this a little bit when we get into it. But there's, 92% of Black women voted not for Trump, right? And so there's this hashtag 92%. There's a whole TikTok university. Remember Hillman College in the Cosby Show?
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't a real college. I believed it was until I didn't know it wasn't a real school. But on TikTok, there is a Black professor. She teaches African American studies, and she has been putting out like a syllabus. And so collectively...
Hillman Talk,
yeah. And there's been... Well, the syllabus said to watch the Donald Glover video for This Is America.
Yeah.
And I could not help but see the similarities in
That's a good
that
video.
Artistry. Yeah. And the way that video was presented and the lyrics in the song and like what Marvin Gaye was talking about, especially when he got to his socially conscious era.
Yeah.
So
that was definitely an era from my understanding.
Yeah. So this is going to be fun. So let's see. Where do we want to start? Maybe what birthed this episode? We were in CrimeCon in England, CrimeCon UK, having a couple drinks and talking about working together, doing a collab. And this was my idea because you love music so much, Aaron, and I knew that about you. And I thought this would be a fun way for us to get you, get your little music brain going in this episode and just have some fun. So, and we need some fun, and I think we need some music. More music
some fun right
and more
now.
More fun these days. A little bit of murder, but music and fun for sure. So, real quick, favorite Marvin Gaye song?
I don't know if it's my favorite, but I actually think the one that I would say if someone wanted a favorite or best or whatever, it would be What's Going On.
Yeah, that was going to be
and
my
it's
vote.
because it's a powerful song. I don't even think you have to completely understand the message. There's something that transfers between his voice coming out of the speakers and just your body receiving that, your ears. It just lights you up. There's something happening when you hear that song. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I'd say it's like in church we have, like in Black churches, there's a lot of music, but there's a section in the service called prayer and like reflection or like meditation kind of music. And that's what this reminded me of, because there's a lot. It's a lot to think about, but also like the melody of it and the horns and it just is kind of meditative. For me.
Yeah.
What do you think, Beth?
I have to say Sexual Healing, of course, is up there. But but my favorite songs are his protest songs, like What's Going On and Mercy, Mercy Me.
Yeah.
They're so awesome. They're really good.
I couldn't agree more.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it. Guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
I was going to say this is a random question, but favorite Marvin Gaye sample, because he's sampled sometimes. And I was just thinking about that. Just like music. I love that one.
I don't know the samples, so you'll have to share that.
That's the only one I
think
can
he
think
sampled his own voice, too.
Oh,
did he really?
Yeah, to create harmonies and things.
Oh, wow.
I think, the documentary might have mentioned that. And, that's a good point that you bring up about Marvin Gaye. And musically, like in the studio, he was a beast. But he hated touring. And for artists back then, that was the only way you could make money. And that's where the drug issues came in, because he would use to cope with his like stage fright and social anxiety and stuff like that. But good stuff.
Yeah, but he performed very well. And it doesn't discount that he had anxiety, but I watch him and I think,
couldn't tell.
Oh man, you're living it, you're breathing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a surprise, actually, learning that he had that terrible stage fright and didn't like being on stage, because from what I could see from the videos, he looked all right.
He looked
like
good,
he was in his element.
Confident. And,
especially those duets with like Tammy Terrell.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like...
Those were the best. If I was going to go say anything else, the Tammy Terrell stuff, that's all gold.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah. So I did a little bit of research. I even read a book. Beth did some research.
So we usually, our research is I read stuff and Wendy listens to stuff. We kind of flipped it around this time.
Yeah. It was an audio.
A whole ass book.
I read a whole book by his ex-wife, Janice Gaye. And boy.
Then I listened to some podcasts and I watched a documentary and read a little bit, but yeah.
We'll have to talk about Janice for sure.
Oh my God. Okay. So before we get into like the whole episode of it all, I just wanted to know, what did you know about Marvin Gaye's death before today? Or did you already know his dad killed him and everything that happened? You already knew that.
I couldn't remember what had happened. I remembered there was a murder and I flipped it around in my head. I thought Marvin Gaye killed his father.
Okay. Yeah, I remember hearing Marvin Gaye died the year I was born. And I remember hearing that his dad killed him because Marvin Gaye was using too much cocaine. That's what my dad told me. And I thought, oh, that's weird. And I never thought about it again until this week.
I don't. So I had just, you're a baby, because I had just graduated high school.
Okay. Well, and Anne was 15. Yeah.
And I remembered, well, I didn't remember anything. I didn't remember that happened at the time. I don't remember hearing about it.
What was there a certain mood in Detroit, Aaron? Like when it happened, like, did you guys cry? Was there a memorial? Were there candlelight vigils?
I was probably too young when it all went down, but I guess, and I can't be an expert just because I'm from Detroit, because there are some well-known Detroit musicians that I know almost nothing about, like Eminem. So I know that'll come as a shock.
Yeah.
But it's true. I'm just trying to be upfront.
Yeah.
I did know about Marvin Gaye having been shot by his father. I knew that because I couldn't get that out of my mind. The fact that someone would be killed
by their own dad,
father. Yeah. But we'll get into it. But there's a lot to talk about in those final hours leading up to the shooting. And I think it's pretty heavy. But
I agree.
I do want to talk about how his life started off, because I think it's instrumental to the life that he led.
Yeah.
I agree. So let's talk about his beginnings. He was born April 2nd, 1939 in Washington, D.C., and he became eventually a defining member in Motown music, blending soul, R&B, and later socially conscious themes in his music. Marvin Pence Gaye Jr. grew up in a very strict household. His dad, the stories about his dad made me really, really sad for him.
Yeah.
And kind of curious about, I want to know more about his father's life. Like what turned him into such a monster?
He was also abused.
Oh, really? I mean, I assume so. And Beth and I have talked about this on the show before, is that growing up Black in America, especially in those times, you couldn't do things like you couldn't go into a store and try on clothes. I'm talking about 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s. Couldn't go in a store and try on clothes, couldn't eat at a lunch counter, those kinds of things. And so parenting Black children in those times was a tenuous, treacherous act. And so disciplining children was often very harsh, because the consequences by the white establishment for a Black child doing something that they were not supposed to be doing, or in a place that they were not supposed to be, or even somebody thinking those things, could get them killed. So discipline was often very harsh to prevent death. And I think it's a really, really sad fact, but I think that might have something to do with the parentage of Marvin Gaye, the singer, and why his parent, what I'm trying to say is I think his dad's childhood was probably traumatic because he was growing up in the American South.
Yeah. So his dad grew up in Kentucky, I think. And he had something like 15 brothers and sisters.
That's right.
Yeah, he was abused, and his mother was abused by his father.
Yeah, so very, very, very sad.
But what we do know about him, though, is he was a charismatic preacher.
Yes.
And he was also a cross-dresser.
Yes. He would walk around the neighborhood with his curlers on, which, culture corner. Black people. So it takes a lot of effort to do our hair. And so sometimes we do go out in public with bonnets and curlers on, because that's not our final destination. The people at the grocery store don't need to see my amazing hairstyle yet. This is for work. So I'm gonna go to Starbucks with the bonnet and the curlers on, but when I get to the parking lot at work, bonnet off, curlers off, and I'm going to look fabulous. That's what my mother did. That's how I do. And I imagine just culturally, that's the thing. It's not unusual to walk around public with your curlers on. What is unusual about Marvin Gaye's father is that he would wear his wife's pantyhose and shoes and clothing. And at some point, I gathered from Janice Gaye's documentary that he would just do it out in the open. It wasn't a secret. And there's one particular story where Marvin Gaye was young and he called his dad queer, and he refused to apologize. And Marvin Gaye's dad, I can't remember if he stripped Marvin Gaye's clothes off or he told Marvin Gaye to get butt naked. And then Marvin Gaye had to sit in a room for like an hour. And Marvin Gaye Sr. was like torturing him by slapping the belt against the door. And just that sound. And Marvin's like crying. Marvin was a very sensitive kid. He was a sensitive man and a sensitive person. But he was also very stubborn. And he just refused to apologize. And his dad beat the shit out of him with the belt that day.
Yeah, and I don't think that was an isolated incident either.
I don't think so either. I don't know. I wish I could meet Marvin Gaye. I feel like we'd be friends. Because I, too, am a very sensitive person.
Yeah, he had a sister and a brother, and I feel like they were talking about how Marvin got the worst of it because he was so defiant. It was almost like he had to carve his own path.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there was a path laid out before him, and I think sometimes he tried to go that way, but he just couldn't stay on that path. He had to be his own person.
Yeah. And there's lots of instances of that like kind of thing happening throughout his life. Like he had to do it his way. Like the conflicts that he had with Berry Gordy at the record company, or that's the only one I can think of right now. But yeah, he had to do it his way.
So in the documentary, they talked about how he was a fighter. Like when there were transitions, it was almost like he was in combat.
Oh.
That's how they described it.
Yeah. I remember that from the documentary. They talked about how one of the things he fought for was love and approval. Yeah. And he just wanted to be loved. And it just seemed
like everybody.
Like everybody.
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh-tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
Ah, but do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something even way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate pina colada and Thai-iced coffee-flavored creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
But the world did love Marvin Gaye, but
when you're brought up the way that he was brought up, and his dad at one point was asked if he loved his son, and he said, well, I don't dislike him. You know, when you grow up in an environment like that, there's a hole in your soul that can never be filled, you know?
Yeah. But you know what it reminds me of? You guys remember that movie that came out with Denzel Washington and Viola Davis, the snot movie Fences, where you remember the scene where they were yelling at each other and fighting and snot was running down their noses? Okay, just me, I guess.
Just you.
Anyway, there's a scene in the movie where Denzel's son says, Dad, do you even love me? He goes, I don't have to love you. You have a roof over your head and clothes on your back and food in your belly. And to be honest, I think that was the prevailing attitude at the time for many Black Americans.
Yeah.
This isn't about love or fun. We just need to survive.
Yeah, but I do wonder, though, if, and this is a question I wish I could ask Marvin, if you led the life that your dad wished you had led, do you think he would actually love you, or would he just be satisfied?
Oh, that is so deep, Aaron. Oh my God.
I don't know what Marvin Gaye would think, but I don't think his father would ever be satisfied.
Well, I mean, satisfied in the fact that he said, you did the right thing.
Well done.
But not, I love you. Because I feel like he never would have been happy with his son, truly.
Exactly.
Not to where he would love him, because that wasn't on the table.
Right.
You know, for him, he wanted, like, you heard the story. There was a point where Marvin had become this huge success. Obviously, if you hear him sing, if you see him sing, there's an energy there that a lot of singers don't have. Nothing against them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But I mean, that's just a different level.
Oh, yeah.
And he puts down this attaché case down on the bed, and it's got $1 million cash in it. He said, Dad, now what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And he basically says to him, if you've strayed from the path of God, then what is it worth?
Right. Yeah. It's a Bible verse. What does it profit a man to gain? No. What does it profit a man to gain the whole wide world and lose his soul? It's in a gospel song. I'm going to see it right now. What does it profit a man to gain the whole wide world and lose his soul? It's one of my favorites.
It's just tough because for me, I think in this world, everybody should try to be happy, and everyone, they require something different to be happy. I mean, it's funny, but I don't know that everyone needs love, but I think that's the one thing that most people need.
Yeah.
Because when you get love, you get acceptance of some kind.
Right.
And he was only getting that from one parent and not the other. And so that just made that like, wow, that's like the holy grail. How do I get that?
Right.
But I think all along he was aware that no matter what he did, he wasn't going to have that.
Right.
But I'm reminded of a moment when I think he met with the mayor and he got like the key to the city or something. They announced, May 1st is Marvin Gaye Day.
Mm-hmm.
He said that was the only time in his life his father ever looked towards him with pride in his eyes.
Wow.
Oh, man.
And I don't know why that is because, I mean,
yeah.
I can't make sense of that.
You tell us.
Well, as you mentioned, his dad was a preacher, and a lot of his opinions are based in religion. And he wasn't just a preacher. I mean, their religion was like some weird Pentecostal religion, and they didn't believe in dancing. And I think he regarded this music that Marvin Gaye was doing as sinful
secular music. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think maybe getting the key to the city is cool. But,
do you love me now, Dad?
But making $1 million doing this music was not. I don't know.
I don't know. See, I just hear music and I'm moved by it.
Yeah.
And I guess his father didn't hear "Ain't No Mountain High Enough," and I guess he wasn't moved. I don't understand.
Well, let's talk about that because the roots of R&B are tied to gospel music.
Right.
And I was under the impression that Marvin Gaye, that's how he was introduced to music, was in church, singing and playing music in church.
Right.
So it's just kind of funny. They sound so similar, gospel music and rhythm and blues. And for his father to not like see that or appreciate that.
Well, they weren't singing about God, so.
Right. Sexual healing is not on the, not in the hymnal.
It's not.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I mean, I don't know. I think anybody who appreciates music can appreciate that those sounds are similar and kind of make you feel good no matter what the words say.
Most people would agree with you, I believe. It's just,
Marvin Gaye
his
Sr.
dad was a bit eccentric.
Yeah,
he
was. Yeah.
Close but no cigar, Wendy.
Okay. Gosh dang it. All right. Well, I'm fired. I'm leaving. So what do we want to go next? His father was a jerk.
His mother adored him.
Yeah. And I remember even, she was like his protector. So she would try to intervene when their dad would be like off the rails. And when Marvin Gaye was engaged, I don't know if they were married yet, but in a relationship with, what's that girl? Janice.
Anna? Oh, Janice.
Oh, the second woman.
Yeah.
The first was Anna Gordy.
The first was Anna Gordy, and that seemed like kind of a ploy to just get Berry Gordy's attention to be able to do what he wanted musically.
You think so?
I do.
I think he really liked her.
Yeah, I think so too.
She was older. She was really cute. And I don't know that it was just a ploy because it's not like it made anything easier. He fought with Berry Gordy all the time, it seemed like.
Yeah, but he stopped being a studio musician and got elevated to something else. And Berry Gordy really listened to whatever his sister said. Berry Gordy was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And I think Marvin Gaye knew that.
It might have been a factor, but I think he loved her at the beginning.
I don't think I said it, that he didn't love her, but I do think he loved her, but I also think it was calculated.
Oh, yeah. I think it was probably a factor.
Yeah. What were we talking about? Sorry, I forgot.
Oh.
Janice.
Oh, yeah.
Janice.
Okay, Janice said that Marvin Gaye's mom, Marvin was like, go stay with my parents while you're pregnant with my baby and I'm on tour somewhere. And Janice was like, I can't go over to your parents' house. Your dad's a wacko. And she was like, Marvin Gaye goes, oh, don't worry, my mom's going to protect you. She'll keep you safe and she'll make sure the baby's okay. So, and in the stories that she told in the book, that seemed to be very true, that his mom did take good care of her and really looked out for her.
I think at one point he described himself as a mama's boy.
Yeah.
How can you not be, right? When you have parents like those.
He didn't have a choice.
I'm on team mom.
Yeah.
Did have a choice.
I think that was also a factor when he married Anna, she was older. She was how much older than him? 17 years older than him, 12 years older. Yeah, she was in her 30s. I think she was 36 or so.
Okay.
And what was he, like 20 or something?
Yeah.
It was 16, 17 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Difference.
But maybe.
And I have to jump in because I feel like by now we should have brought up the name change.
Oh,
because
right.
Marvin Gaye as a musician is Gaye. And you kind of have to go back to his childhood when the other neighborhood kids would constantly mock and make fun of him because his last name was Gay.
Right.
And his dad was a cross-dresser who walked around in heels around the neighborhood, no problem.
Yeah.
And so they constantly said he was actually gay.
Right.
And it bothered him because he wasn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he's being mischaracterized and abused. Mm-hmm. And so as a musician, he wanted to kind of like recast himself and appear a completely different way than he had felt growing up.
The rebrand.
And I think going with Anna Gordy, like what Beth said, I think that's another thing is he always had comfort and he had love with his mother. And I think he might have seen some of that with Anna.
Yeah.
And felt really comfortable with her right away. Now, things can change over time.
Boy, did they.
Because you start making more money, you get around new crowds. But I mean, I think there was an attraction there early on, just like what Beth said.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you know what? Let's go with it. I agree, guys, but I also think it was calculated. Now,
okay.
So he marries Anna, and Anna's Berry Gordy's sister, and then he starts making these hits. Berry Gordy pairs him up with Tammy Terrell, and it's a smash after smash. Ain't no mountain high, ain't no valley low, ain't no river.
Who's cuter than Tammy,
Oh
right?
Yeah,
God.
she was so cute.
And her voice of an angel. Of an angel. And I was devastated. I can only imagine how much it devastated Marvin. But she died so young of such a horrible disease, a brain tumor.
Yeah.
That like was unexpected. And just imagine, she probably had way more music in her to make.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And yeah, that's a real tragedy. But it
really
really
sad.
affected Marvin.
Yeah.
Hey, Fidelity. How can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
So Tammy Terrell dies, and Marvin Gaye's focus shifts towards deeper and meaningful themes in his music. And cut to 1971, What's Going On is dropped.
Yeah.
And that was an album. It was incredibly influential. It's widely regarded as one of the greatest albums of all time. And it was inspired by, now at this time, Marvin Gaye had a brother, Frankie, who was in the military. And Marvin and Frankie would have phone conversations while he was overseas about the horrors that his brother was seeing over there in Vietnam. And Frankie's wife said they would just cry on the phone together because they would it would be so upsetting that the reality of these horrible things that are being done to human beings. Of what's going on. Yes, Beth. So it was inspired by the Vietnam War, racial inequality and police brutality, poverty and environmental concerns, and his own spiritual and personal struggles, right? He's still kind of having issues with the ladies, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Marvin, he had been in the military briefly. He had gone into the Air Force, but
right.
it didn't work out because he just couldn't take orders.
He was too stubborn. Yeah.
He just couldn't do it. And I think they were nice and they kind of understood that because he wasn't like dishonorably discharged.
Yeah. He was just
they were kind of like, yeah, you should find something else to do.
The military's not for you.
You're not military material. Yeah. You're not Uncle Sam material. And guess what? That's not that bad because he ended up changing the world and impacting the universe in a much more profound way than I think he would have if he had stayed in the military longer than he needed to.
Right.
But when he wrote the initial track, What's Going On, Berry Gordy was like, you're not putting that song out. We do happy, boo bop, bebop, have fun songs. This is not fun. This makes people think about reality, and we want people to escape from it. And then Janice said in her book that Marvin was like, if you don't put this song out, I'm not singing another fucking note for you people.
Wow.
Wow. So it came out and everybody loved it.
Yeah.
Barry was wrong.
Yeah.
Here's a shocker. I have to say this.
Yeah.
Have you not, either one of you or both of you, have you not put on a movie or a song that you know is going to make you cry and you do it anyway?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
You're just going to feel it.
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. I
For
need
sure.
the feelings. I need all the feels.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotta feel it.
Yeah. And I think America at this time in 1971, this is 1971, the civil rights movement happened. Martin Luther King was killed. Malcolm X was killed. John F. Kennedy was killed. Bobby Kennedy was killed. And like the war is going on. It's like, what is going on? This was a hard time, I think, for Americans. And I believe the appetite for a song like this was ripe.
Yeah.
Because people felt like he was singing to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God.
And the music is just, I don't know, it just pulls you in. It pulls your soul in. That's all I can describe it as,
Yeah.
You just get pulled right into the music. Yeah, it's just beautiful.
I couldn't agree more. I have, in preparation for this show, I've been listening to What's Going On, like on repeat, and it just makes me feel so good.
Yeah.
So good. Like, and almost also validated.
A little, but a little sad too, at least for me.
Well, I just feel validated because there's fucked up shit going on. And Marvin Gaye's like, yeah, I want to know what's going on too. And I'm like, me too, Marvin. And so I feel like he's like in conversation
Like he's
with
talking
me.
to you.
Yeah. Like this is crazy. You're not crazy. And that's one of the things I really took away from listening to the music this week. But there's a couple more tunes on there. What's Going On, obviously. Mercy, Mercy Me. Oh, Mercy,
Which is stuck
Mercy
in my
Me.
head right now. Yeah.
That's a good one. Things just ain't what they used to be, huh, Beth?
Yeah.
Inner City Blues. Made me want to holler. Ooh, I love that one. That's the song that they play in every like 1970s cop movie and the long cop car and it's rolling down the street. That's the song I think of when I hear that song. And then Save the Children, which I was much less familiar with.
Yeah.
That song didn't speak to me as much as the other three, but that is on there in case you want to know. And the album was considered a vehicle for social change. And we were kind of talking about Childish Gambino's This Is America.
Oh, yeah.
And this, like this period in time, this album, this music kind of reminded me of that. Not in the same Childish
way,
Gambino's story is not at all like Marvin Gaye's.
And This Is America is different. And I mean, Marvin Gaye just has a way of like just kind of sneaking up on you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Where Childish Gambino, it's like bam in your face, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's true. You're kind of lulled into this protest song. And all of a sudden you're realizing
like,
what kind of song it is.
Me. Like, wait, what? This is a protest song?
You know what? That's a really, really good point. Sneaky protest songs.
Yeah.
By the way, I feel like we need more of them.
Yes, we do.
So after that, after he does What's Going On, he does some more socially conscious work and puts out You're the Man, a song criticizing political corruption, Trouble Man, a soundtrack album for a film, and Anger, a song about the dangers of unresolved rage. And I think at this time, this I feel like is the end of the Marriage with Anna time. These songs.
I remember something about an album that was written for Anna because in the divorce, the judge said he had to give the proceeds to his next album to Anna. So he wrote this album trying to make it suck.
so that it wouldn't sell anything.
I think I heard some of it, and I feel like what he was doing was he was just telling their story.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And so I don't know if she ended up liking the content of the album, but I don't think he was any kind of a slouch in the studio.
No,
I think he put something together there.
I don't think it was bad, but I don't think he was trying to make it good.
He wasn't trying to make a hit.
He wasn't trying to make a hit so that so it wouldn't make a whole ton of money. But
yeah.
Well, I would encourage you to listen to a couple of those songs because I feel like
Aaron disagrees.
Because it could be a kind of a mocking album, but it was still quality, I thought.
Okay.
And I think it was just, he couldn't just pay her what an alimony would be.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's where the album comes in. And I've listened to some people who knew Marvin Gaye, hung out with them, their takes on it. And it's felt like a lot of them just kind of laughed and said, man, he really got a lot off his chest there, But
so
I imagine
she
made some
Taylor
money
Swifted
from it.
Huh?
Maybe. But what is interesting is just what I wanted to talk about because we just had the Grammys and Chaperone was talking about, I almost, didn't make it because the record companies abandoned me and I didn't get health insurance. And I'd never heard anything like that on a Grammy stage before or any stage before. But, making music and making a living off of it and being able to
kind
feed
of
yourself
artistic endeavor
is so difficult.
Yeah.
And these big companies, Berry Gordy, again, doesn't sound like he was a very nice guy or a very fair to his artists. That, you kind of put these artists in these difficult positions that they can't leave their contracts. Like, he had a hard time getting out of his contract with Motown Records before he was able to go to CBS. And the money, he did have money issues, legitimate money. He wasn't great with it. But I also think part of it is what the industry did to him as well. Like, you can only make money if you go on tour, but you don't want to go on tour. Like, what is that? So,
and not everyone's good with money.
Right.
I mean, look what happened to Mike Tyson. He was making over $20 million a fight.
Yeah.
How did he ever end up, well, not really, but sort of going broke?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because you're not managing it correctly.
You're not managing.
And you have lots of people saying, hey, I need this, I need that. And
that does
a lot
happen
of these guys,
to
they feel like they can just spread the love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then, they're basically being taken for it.
Yeah. That does happen to a lot of athletes too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that was definitely true for Marvin. He had a lot of people to take care of. Like Janice said, he bought his parents a nice house in LA. They didn't need it, but he bought it anyway. And he was just buying frivolous things. He would say to her, spare no expense, go shopping today, do whatever you want. And, she didn't have a job or anything. She didn't have any way to sustain herself. So she was just like, okay, I guess. But he was really bad with money. And part of me thinks that is part of his mental illness that we learn more about as he's struggling as his life goes on. The impulsivity, the rash decisions, the things that I learned that he did to to his girlfriend and Anna when he was angry are awful.
Pretty fucked up,
yeah. Like he would just show up places, accuse them of having affairs with other men. I think that he would kind of engage in some orgy business and some cuckery, if you will, with his girlfriends. But anyway, just poor decisions in general. But I don't think that's entirely because he didn't
doing
know.
a lot of drugs.
Yeah, drugs, mental illness, but also lack of knowledge. That's what I wanted to say.
And an unstable upbringing.
Yes. Hey, Fruities. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, part 1 of our crossover collab with Aaron of Generation Y. We love those guys. Every time we encounter them at any of the crime cons or in the annals of the internet, they are just so kind and generous. And we're so grateful for these OGs of true crime to consider us and collaborate with us. We're so grateful. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have any thoughts about Marvin Gaye, his music, let us know what your favorite Marvin Gaye song is, or just anecdotes. I had a lot of Marvin Gaye time with my parents back in the day. That was one of their favorite artists, so that's how I was introduced. Just let us know what you think about the episode. And again, anything about it, you can get at us on all the socials. We're not really fucking with X these days, so find us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok sometimes. We love you, And as always, look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there.
Where are you living now, Wendy?
Oh, great question. So I don't know if Aaron knows this, but my house got shot up. So we were the victims of gun violence. I sold my house in Georgia where it happened. We thought we'd be able to find a house by now, and we didn't. So I have been, I stayed at a campsite for 45 days. That was amazing. I stayed at an extended stay hotel. That was interesting. And now we're in a house, an actual home.
Oh, an
with
actual
doors.
Home.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a rental.
Nice.
Yeah. I was hoping to not have to do that. I haven't rented a house in 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, because they ask you for like your old landlord's information to see if you're a good renter. And
right.
I didn't have any of that. But
in a little while, yeah.
It's been a while. But I found a place and it's pretty nice. I'm in Closet Studios, and each of the kids has their own room. Old Whitey and I, our bed is in the living room.
Oh, wow.
But when we first got married, our apartment, back in the day, the bed was in the living room. So it's kind of it's kind of nostalgic.
Reminiscent. Yeah.
And internet's great. Well, not great. Your picture looks way better than mine. But it's better than it was last time we tried to record.
Last time we tried to record, it was not happening.
That was so frustrating. But we're safe. We're together, and we have what we need.
That's what's important.
Taking deep breaths and saying that to myself, because have you seen what's going on in the world?
Yeah.
I don't even. It's crazy.
Every day is a nightmare.
The world as we know it America is different. It's not what it was when I was a kid, or even when I first had my kids. It is fundamentally different, and it is crazy. So I haven't watched the news. I just know it's not good out there. And I'm watching the Real Housewives of New York.
I've been watching probably too much news, so
take a break, my friend.
I gotta know what's going on.
I know.
You gotta find some joy.
Yeah, you gotta find
some joy. Yeah, somehow or another. I eat.
You're eating your feelings.
I've gained like 10 pounds.
It's interesting not having a real home. I haven't looked in a full length mirror in a long time.
A little bit.
So I was like, wow, look at me. Taller than I thought.
I want to take a moment to tell you about my podcast, Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage. In 1984, a woman named Phyllis Cottle was abducted in broad daylight, tortured, and left to die in a burning car in Akron, Ohio. At the time, I was a rookie reporter covering this horrific story. Since then, I've reported every kind of crime imaginable. I've been able to leave most of them at work, but not this one, the one that buried itself under my skin and stayed put. Phyllis Cottle was a badass woman, and I want to tell you her story. A production of Evergreen Podcasts and signature title of the Killer Podcast Network, you can find Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage wherever you get your podcasts. Discover more great true crime and paranormal programming at killerpodcast.com.
Ohio is a land of mystery, from missing shipwrecks and lost treasure beneath her surface to strange phenomenon slicing through her skies. From myths that have evolved around historic events and people, to the unsolved murders and disappearances that keep her communities wondering what happened. Find Ohio Mysteries on your favorite podcast app, and let's explore the inexplicable. OhioMysteries.com.